Well, here we go again, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass Commissioners. Just a couple of regular Joes who feel it's time for unification in our sport and want to see it become the very best that it can possibly be. We tackle the hard issues in the sport, and when necessary, we produce binding rulings which the organizations will probably just ignore. And you know when you hear a good idea. That's the Bass Commissioners. Tonight we tackle the question of, is bass fishing really a professional sport? We don't see any other sports where pros have to pay to play. We've also got a few other things to get off our chest tonight as well. Do you have a comment? Do you have a question? Is there something in the world of bass fishing that the commissioners need to address? Shoot us a comment or DM us on Instagram at Bass Tour Anglers Podcast, and we'll start investigating. I'm your co-host, Keith Neiswanger, and we are, of course, always joined by Patrick Schaefer. Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did I see where this weekend you not only got to go fishing, but you got to go hunting as well?
I did. Actually, so we started off, this is the trip we do every year, and we go about 3 hours south from where I live right now, and we all get together and go on a big duck hunt. It's a guided duck hunt, and then this year we went hunting and then drove back about another hour south, and then got up this morning and went out and went fishing. We kind of had to dodge the weather. It was raining this morning, and so we got a little bit of a late start, but we went out there and caught a few little ones and came back in.
We're talking about ocean fish now, right?
Yeah, we were out in the bay, so we're catching speckled trout, trying to catch some redfish.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm going to start tonight if that's okay.
That is fine with me. I was actually going to say you should start because I had about 4 hours of driving to sit here and think about my response to your first question. So it's quite possible that your first deal could take up this whole show.
Well, I tell you what, I have. This is something that I have been thinking about for a long time, off and on, and I've talked about it before on my podcast. But I am of the opinion that bass fishing cannot be a professional sport until we stop making pros pay for their own entry fee. Now, I recognize that this is not possible at all levels of quote-unquote professional bass fishing. But I think it is ridiculous that we have tours where anglers have to pay entry fees. Name me another sport where the pros have to pay to play.
There's not one. So, but the fishing industry, unfortunately, is a lot different in the sense that there's no way, or right now, so not there's no way, but right now, bass or the major tournament trails, let's just say it that way, doesn't really do things to recoup or to earn money. What I mean by that is, if I go to a baseball game, I buy tickets. The price of those tickets goes to the stadium or goes to the team. If I go to a football game or a basketball game, it's the same thing. If I go to a golf tournament, there's people lined up and down all 18 holes of that golf tournament, and everybody paid money to get in there. But when I've been to two weigh-ins, one on the MLF and one for the Bass Redfish Cup, and I didn't pay any money for any of it. They weren't selling anything there. Now, maybe they were, but this was the last day. Well, the MLF one was kind of mid-tournament. The other one was the last day. Nobody was there selling anything. I couldn't buy anything. So, like, for example, when I watched what Jordan Lee won the Bassmasters Classic on Lake Conroe on, and he he caught him on a mop jig and a 5XD citrus shad crankbait. So I went out and bought those crankbaits, and I bought some mop jigs, which actually I bought his Strike King comeback jig. But bass is the reason that I went out and bought that stuff, because ultimately they held the Bassmasters Classic, but they got $0 from me for that. Now let's take baseball into this. So this kind of leads me to a point with baseball. When my wife and I, we live in Houston, so we're Astros fans. Well, we started dating. We started going to a lot of baseball games. So we're at the game one day, and I was like, you know what? I need to buy a new jersey. So I got some older ones. They've changed uniforms, and obviously they're in the American League now. I'm going to buy a new jersey. So I look up at the scoreboard and realize that Alex Bregman, who had just come got called up to the majors that year, hadn't hit a home run. So I look at my wife and I say, if Alex Bregman hits a home run, I'm buying his jersey. And he was up to bat. Next thing you know, he hits a home run, I go buy his jersey. Now with that, MLB got money because it's got the MLB sticker on it. The Astros made money because it's their team, and I'm sure Bregman got a cut out of it. So everybody makes money, and they're able to pay their fishermen, or the teams can do stuff for the fan or whatever, or the teams can pay their players, not their fishermen, but they can pay their players. But in bass or MLF, nobody's really doing anything to earn money. So then you start getting into the sponsors that have to pay to fund the anglers, but they're already paying to fund the anglers by signing them to Strike King deals or lose deals or whatever. So I guess we could almost do a whole show on different ideas and I, like you said, my thought was, do you come up with a team like, hey, you fish for Team Strike King and you use all Strike King related products, or you fish for, I don't know.
Well, I do have some thoughts on this, and I think my thoughts are that I always feel like in professional bass fishing, the angler gets the short end of the stick always. And, this goes back to this still happens in places where an organization will give a bass boat to the winner, and they'll claim that it's a $75,000 prize, when the organization didn't pay $75,000 for that boat. The manufacturer of that boat didn't pay $75,000 to make that boat. They probably made that boat for half, if not less than half. And so my point is that, we've got bass boat currency. We've got, and it's only worth $75,000 to that pro if he can sell the boat for that price. He probably needs the money sooner, so he probably gets lowballed by somebody. I do believe that there are people that go to these kinds of events to buy that boat and perhaps even flip that boat later on. So I'm getting off the rails a little bit here, but I've always felt that the angler gets the short end of the stick here, and yet the anglers are the ones that are supporting everything. So my thought is this. At the upper tiers, I think there needs to be an organization, and maybe one of the organizations themselves will do this, but it may take an outside entity. But I feel like, by the way, if you, I don't know if you've watched Major League Fishing's team events yet, but to me, that is moving in the direction that it needs to move to. I think that an organization should start with no anglers, no qualifying. It comes purely down to team dollars. So you mentioned Strike King. And to enter this competition, Strike King can pick three anglers only, because that's what the field is going to be, a limited field. It's going to be, well, I would say maybe not limited, but whatever companies will jump into this, they can pick their three anglers, and that's going to be their team. Now, I don't care what the anglers use when they're fishing, because if it's a non-endemic company, if it's Budweiser, we don't expect them to be drinking Budweiser all day. So I don't think it matters if they use the equipment or not. But the companies would select 3 anglers, and these 3 anglers would fish for that team. And this opens up another thing that I think is important, and I think that is angler free agency. So in other words, okay, you're going to draft Jacob Wheeler on your team. You want Jacob Wheeler to be on your team. I imagine Jacob Wheeler would be fairly expensive to have on your team. And I don't know what a sponsor would have to pay Jacob Wheeler to fish on that team. But you know what? Shouldn't matter. Jacob should be able to negotiate the best price he can possibly get. And so my feeling is that these these teams, they want to enter, whether it be a Bassmaster competition or a Major League Fishing competition, it's going to cost them X dollars to do this. And they're going to get some advertising out of it, and they're going to get a lot of advertising out of it, but they're also going to fund the prize pool. And so it's probably too expensive, but I think it's the direction the sport needs to go, and I think it's a direction that Major League Fishing is starting to go with their team series. Only I would suggest that because these anglers are negotiating their own contracts, it doesn't need to be a team series. It can still be an individual field.
Right.
And I'm not making this is not new. This is what NASCAR does, right?
Yeah, in every other sport. Whatever professional sports team, whether it's baseball, football, not every player on that team makes the exact same salary.
Right.
And not every player for every other team. At one point in time, Alex Rodriguez, his annual salary for the Yankees was more money than the Astros' entire roster. So, and they had to compete against each other. And it's happened with other teams. I remember, I've heard him talk about it, but it's, hey, I'm going to pay you a lot of money to come fish for my team. And, okay, if it is Strike King, yeah, maybe I have you use some Strike King products or whatever, and you go out and catch some fish, and it helps generate some revenue for me. But, I'm with you. Like, you could have a free agency deal. You have to get rid of – you could have some lower-tier fishing deals where maybe some guys pay some entry fees and win some deal, and then you could draft people just like the NFL takes college. Baseball they pull from college and high school, but then they put them in the minor league system. But then you go out there and you say, hey, I'm going to sign this guy from whatever tier. I'm going to bring him up, and we're going to pay him starting out. We're going to pay him, I don't know, $120,000 a year, just throwing a random number out there to fish. We're going to cover all his expenses, and, as far as boat, he can use whatever boat he wants to use as long as it meets these rules. If he goes and works out a deal with the boat manufacturer, because some of them, sometimes they get like, hey, if you run a Honda motor on your boat, we'll give you $10,000 off the price of the motor. So they may not get the motor for free, but they get it discounted.
Oh, yeah.
So, but then they can use whatever boat they want. If they want to get some outside sponsors, that maybe not in the deal, but like Igloo, like Jake Wheeler uses Igloo and stuff like that, they can have a little extra money. That's perfectly fine. Just like in NASCAR. But sponsor that guy and then let them fish. And then they can throw money. Some of their money can go towards the Bass organization. Then Bass and MLF, they need to start selling stuff on their website that's tied to these anglers. Like, hey, go buy a Brandon Polnick shirt. Go buy a Jacob Wheeler jersey.
Merchandising.
And Bass, MLF can get money or Bass can get money. You can send a little bit to the organization, and then they make money. Plus, they got money from their lower deals, and the sponsors donate money. And then you go from there. And if you want to keep Jacob Wheeler, you're going to have to pay him. So
Right. And you're right. By the way, shout out to Off the Hook Jigs has joined us. It's a pretty he's got some pretty cool stuff. If you get a chance to check out his Instagram, Off the Hook Jigs, he's got some great. I love the spade tails. I call them spade tails, and the cow tongues that he makes. That's what I call them. But some really good plastic baits and some pretty cool jigs. So shout out to Off the Hook Jigs. Thanks for being on tonight. Being on the in the audience tonight. Well, so I got this angler free agency thing is I think a big deal, and I could see it becoming pretty big. I can hear the sponsors in the audience right now, shifting in their chairs because they can see how expensive this is going to be, and I think it should be. To me, everything has been upside down in this sport for so long. The anglers who are the stars of the show, I don't watch a tournament to see BASS or Major League Fishing. I watch it to see the anglers.
Right.
And really, I'll be honest with you, when Major League Fishing, when BASS broke up a few years ago, when those guys all went, those were all my heroes. Those were all the people that I cared about. And the BASS Elite Series it didn't have any names that I recognize now. Over the last couple of years, starting to pay a little more attention to it because it's got some big names, and of course people are going back. But it's the names, it's the anglers that I care about, and they should be at the top of this sport and not at the bottom.
Right. No, I agree, and like I said, I think more needs to be done. Like you'll see a lot of these companies like, hey, are these guys that have AFTCO or Strike King discount codes. So you go type in this discount code and you can get 5% or 10% off your order, even if it's just 5% off your order. But then these sponsors can track more of how much their product's being pushed by whatever individual, and that can help show you how much. I mean, in other sports, if you sell, like my Bregman, if you sell 200,000 Bregman jerseys, you can track how many Bregman jerseys were sold, or Aaron Judge or Mike Trout or whoever. That you're a Dodgers fan, Clayton Kershaw. I mean, you can track how many of that. You can see how many people like that guy.
Right.
Where, like last year, my brother caught his personal best fish on the Citrus Shad OG Slim Rapala crankbait. But all that, the reason I had Citrus Shad leads all back to watching Jordan Lee on Bassmasters win the Classic he used a Citrus Shad crankbait. So everything I try to buy now, no matter what company it comes from, is Citrus Shad. But Bass got zero credit again for any of that.
Yes, and again, I'm not so much bothered by that, but I do like what you're talking about in terms of merchandising. Bass, Major League Fishing, they should merchandise that stuff. And you're right, you can then track what anglers are the ones that people want to follow. I like what Brandon Polinick does, and I like what Matty Wong does. Matty Wong works for the company called Lateral Vision. They're out here where I am, and they put out a shirt from time to time, and I believe Brandon Polinick puts out a shirt for every tournament.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he gets from that, but I got to believe it's worth doing. It certainly is a. It certainly brings a lot of attention. I mean, anytime I'm anywhere and I see one of those Brandon Polinick, tournament shirts, I'm like, oh wow, this person likes the same kind of stuff that I like. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, I have two Matty Wong shirts and one of the Brandon Polinick shirt from when he caught his 30-pound bag on Lake Fork, and it's the Dirty 30, and then I got two of Catch Bass and Aloha, because I love Hawaii, and Matty Wong's from Hawaii, and I like the shirts and everything. So like you said, yeah. So I'm sure he gets a little money from that. And initially, when I read like Matty Wong's deal, that he was using that to help fund his tournament. So I was like, hey, even better. I can help him out.
Yeah.
Wear a cool T-shirt.
Yeah. Okay. So what I suggest, and here's the thing, I think people's feelings would be hurt. You know what? We do that on this show. We hurt people's feelings, and that's just the way it is. But no qualification. The only qualification is that you have a sponsor who has bought their way in to the circuit by being by forming a team, and let them put whoever they want on their team, and that becomes professional fishing.
Yeah. And then they fish from that. And earlier, like when I was kind of making my point about Bass not getting any money, if Bass was to get any money from those lure sales that they helped push, then they could use that for prize money. Just
Right.
kind of how, or sports organizations they sell tickets and everything else to get money to pay their players. And if we did things like that, then you could make money. And hey, we're going to have an event. Come to the show. I mean, he said I went to the MLF event expecting there to be some kind of handout so that I could get autographs. Or I thought, maybe I'll get an autograph. And then I'm standing there and there was nothing there. And here comes Kevin Van Dam. So I was like, oh, I got a hat. Hey, will you sign my hat? My brother wanted Jason Christie's autograph, so I get Jason Christie to sign my hat. And then I pulled out my fishing license holder and said, hey, can you sign this for my brother? And I gave that to him. So I just feel like we are missing some opportunity, or they are missing some opportunities to make a little bit of money at some of these events that I haven't been to all of them. But, and then like you said, get these teams together, draft who you want. We're going to make a team. We're going to, we're going to go out and fish. And if you're not cutting it, you're out. And some people are going to say, well, that's not fair to that guy. Well, even if we've still, under the current format, if they're not catching the fish, they're still going to be out. So we didn't really change anything other than now these people get to draft the people they think are going to be the best. And it works in every other sport. So it's not like this guy, because he's such and such's cousin's best friend, is going to get brought up to fish. Because they're going to want to win. And if they win, their team gets money and it looks better and people go out and buy their products because their team's winning. Just like it works in every other sport. Your team's doing really good, everybody wants to come and watch. When your team's not doing good, there's nobody in the stands.
Right.
So
right. And now, what kinds of companies do you think would number one, want to do this or could afford to do this? I started to say Mercury might be a company that would do that, but you know what? I don't think Mercury can afford to alienate all of the other anglers that they have. I mean, I guess they could still have their program. I take that back. They could definitely do it. They could pick three pros that they're the top three pros that they want, and they could do that. I like what you said about a draft, but I almost think there's not a draft in NASCAR that I'm aware of. I think that the company or the team, they just hire the driver that they want, and
right.
And they got to pay that driver's price, right?
Yeah, and you would need a draft. Like NASCAR, you have a bunch of divisions that they come up through, and then when they're doing really good down here, then they'll get called up and like, hey, this guy's not doing anything, we're going to get this guy. And this guy could be fishing for Strike King's minor league team and a team like, we'll just say Duckett. Duckett could have their own team, and they could go, hey, we're going to sign this guy to Team Duckett. He's going to come fish for us. And Mercury could have a team. They could tell guys, hey, look, we don't care what boat you run. We just want you to have a Mercury motor on it, and we'll make sure you have one. Or however they want to figure that out. I mean, some of those deals could be worked out, but, just like anything else, hey, it doesn't matter whether you really like Mercury motors or not. If they're going to give you a free one, you're going to put it on your boat.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Echo Baits is on. These guys are pretty cool. The Echo Baits. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but they're the ones that make the ones that make the jig heads that show up well on on forward facing electronics. They've got a pretty neat, innovative product that they're working with.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Had that
I
one
like
a few
that.
weeks ago.
I'm excited. I want to try it.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe their website is up and active now, and I think they just I think they just finished their show, their big show. Of course they did. I saw it on Instagram. They were at the East Tennessee Sports Show, I think it was, and so they're on the map now. That's
Yeah,
cool.
that was when they were supposed to release the product. I'm sure they could tell us, but wasn't that was the first time they were actually having it available to people?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I think their website's active now. All right. Well, I kind of feel like we need a rule on this from the standpoint that it may not be something that is feasible for any organization to do yet. But, I mean, I guess before we rule, I was thinking about teams like Bridgeford. I was thinking about teams like, Mercury, Yamaha. Yeti would be one possible one. Probably APCO could be one. I think there are the companies out there. The question would be, does this take all the money away? Because the prize pool needs to also be funded by these companies that buy in, right?
Right.
I mean, whatever amount a company has to pay to do this, if it's $1 million or whatever it is, that goes. I mean, part of that's got to go prize pool. Part of that could go to an organization, I guess. And this is probably wishful thinking. $1 million takes a big bite out of an advertising budget, but I think that if we're going to make professional bass fishing a real sport, a real professional sport, there has got to be a tier where pros are able to negotiate their own contracts, be free agents, and I think that they've got to be able to fish for money that they didn't have to put up.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, they just gotta figure out the way to make all that happen. Because unfortunately, it's been done.
It's always been done this way.
We've always done it.
Yeah.
We have that same saying in the fire service. Like, you'll ask somebody, "Hey, why are you doing it this way?" Well, that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
Well, that's terrible, and nobody wants to change because that's the way we've always done it.
Right. People are afraid of change. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, I'm going to try to phrase this so we can rule on it.
All right.
Let's see. So we need a professional bass tour that help me out on this. We need a no-entry professional tour that is funded by teams that join the organization, and so that the top tier anglers do not have to pay to play.
I agree.
All right. Have we done it? Okay. 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. And we have another ruling in the books. The Bass Commissioners have spoken. Very good. Very good. Well, you're up next. What have you got?
All right. So, tournament trails should be forced to go out west at least every other year.
We just had a Wild West Bass tournament event this week. It's one of our first Bass 2 Angler Podcast Angler of the Year contests, and I was going over the results today, and they had 115 anglers at Lake Shasta. I don't know if the West can support the big tours or not. They did come out, the BASS Elite Series used to come out and do a Delta Clear Lake swing, which was fun. And those fields were always full. So, yeah, maybe they need to do that. Maybe they need to do that.
far as bass fishing, the furthest west I went was Arizona. I would like to get out to California sometime and fish out there. I've heard a lot of good things about it. But if you're going to tell me these anglers are the best fishermen in the country, then they need to fish all over the country. And I understand the logistics, and I know that driving out west is a lot of money. So I have no problem if you do it every other year. Or even if you started out and you did it every third year. I mean, whatever, but come up with something. Every other year I think would be good. You have so many great anglers that have come from the West Coast, and half of them I find out who they are, and they're living in Guntersville. Well, come to find out, you start listening to their backstory, and they're from California.
Yep.
They're from, you look at Brandon Polnick, he's from Idaho. And,
right.
You got Josh Bertrand, he's from Arizona. And,
yep.
The Aaron Martins, Skeet Reese, and all the, Justin Lucas and Ish Monroe, and all these guys that came from the West Coast that come over here and make it. Let some of these East Coast guys have to go out there and fish. And I get it's a lot of logistics and everything else, and with fuel prices climbing and all that kind of stuff. But, there's got to be a way to figure something out. I feel like there's so many people that are so eager for them to come out west that you could probably get some pretty good sponsorship type stuff from stuff going on in the West Coast that you might be able to help. Like, hey, guys, we're going to give you $1,000 to help pay for your gas to drive out west and back. And some of these anglers, you look at Scott Martin, most of the time he's hanging out at home and somebody's driving his boat, truck and boat somewhere, and then he gets on a plane and flies there.
Yeah.
And I understand that because he's got a lot of stuff going on and other obligations he's got to be at. And I know other anglers kind of do the same thing. But, Jacob Porosnik was talking about fishing a tournament up in the Northwest and said, heck, I'll go fish over there. I'll pay somebody to drive my truck and boat there, and I'll just get on a plane.
Yeah.
So it is possible to do stuff like that. So why don't we do it? Let's make these anglers that are supposed to be the best in the country go out west and prove to us that they're the best in the country. And I forgot Mark Daniels Jr. He's from the west.
Absolutely. He's a Delta rat, that's for sure. I think it's a good idea that you have there. I think that's something we can probably rule on tonight as well. It sounds like a no-brainer. I do know that people are afraid of California, and there are things to be afraid of out here. But there are also some phenomenal fisheries here. The Delta is amazing. Clear Lake is amazing. Lake Shasta is amazing. And I tell you what, we finally have some water. We have had tremendous amounts of rain, and the snowpack has been unbelievable. These lakes are about 80% from being full right now, and that is really good. The one lake that we just won't know about until the snow melt is Lake Mead. That lake has just, and it's such a good lake. In its best days. But I think there's reasons to be positive about the West. We do have water in our lakes now. We didn't have water in our lakes. Probably when you and I started doing this about a month ago, we did not have this water is new water. We've had a lot of rain. It's raining outside right now. We've had a lot of rain, the reservoirs are filling up. It's pretty exciting.
And for me, and part of the reason that this kind of pushed me is it opens up the sport of bass fishing to different regions of the country. So, for example, I didn't really know much about the western part of the United States as far as bass fishing goes, and I listened to the Anglers Happy Hour podcast, which is Josh Bertrand. Yeah. I listened to their podcast. Well, I listened to him talk about guide fishing, and Rob's one of the guides. And so him and I kind of connected on Instagram, and I actually in August flew. Unfortunately, I didn't get to fish with him, but I actually flew to Arizona strictly to go fishing in Arizona with Rob. I ended up fishing with a couple other guys, which were awesome. But that's what got. If not for that, I would have never gone out west to fish. I'm not gonna say never, but I wouldn't have made plans specifically to go do that.
Yeah.
So, but you listen to them talk about it, and I watched some of Josh's videos where he's out there on the lakes fishing a little bit, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. You know what? I'm gonna go out there, and I got to fish 2 different lakes, and it's completely different than what we got here in Texas. And I had a blast. And I took my son with me, and he caught some fish, and he was having a great time. And the first day, he caught more fish than I did, so he was really happy. And I learned some stuff, and they taught me a few things. I told them I was getting a boat, so they were showing me a few things. But I just feel like if you go out west and you show like the California Delta, what is it really like to fish the California Delta, and giving it that kind of, information and knowledge out there to everybody else, they can see what the California Delta is like. They can see Shasta or whatever lakes out there they think can handle it. And for MLF, the smaller lakes are in their wheelhouse because they split the field.
Right.
So they can fish these smaller lakes.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I think we need to make a ruling on this. The Bass Commissioners demand that the professional tour organizations come to the West at least every other year. 2 rulings in one night. Outstanding. We've got about a minute left on our Zoom for tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and shut that down right now. But we'll stay on Instagram for a few more minutes to see if you have any other gripes that you'd like to share. So thanks for being with us again tonight, Commissioner. I feel like we made the sport a little bit better, but one step at a time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for the Bass Commissioners tonight. You know, I have long felt that the sport of professional bass fishing does not get the respect that it deserves by the organizations, by the sponsors, and I think our ideas tonight are well in line with getting this sport aimed in a direction that it needs to be. The top pros should not have to pay to play. I invite your questions and comments on this subject. Until next time, keep those life vests zipped and clipped, keep both hands on the wheel, be safe, and the Bass Commissioners will see you next week.